Welcome to a special 50th episode celebration of the Lighthouse Conversations, a show featuring entrepreneurs and tastemakers from the altar of world, culture, tech, and of course food. I'm your host, Hasha Montasser, the Traveling Gourmand. As you may have seen already, we've got 2 episodes for you today as part of this 50th special. Now, a few weeks ago, the inaugural MENA's 50 Best Restaurant list was announced, a landmark moment for the region, so we're digging into the list, how it came to be, and what it means for the region. On this episode, we're getting thoughts from Claudia de Brito, who serves as Academy Chair for the Gulf region for MENA 50 Best, and one of our show's former guests and close friends, Samantha Wood, aka Fodiba. They tell us what they think about the impact of the list on the Middle East food scene, as well as some juicy future predictions. We will also hear from Chef Reef Othman, whose restaurant, Reef Kushiyaki, was named to the MENA 50 Best list while he was awarded the region's prestigious first peer-voted Chef's Choice Award. Let's start with Claudia sharing how the list came to the region.
It's a list that was started by William Reed Publishing. It's a publisher based out of the UK about 20 years ago now. And it started as a global list put together by editors of where, readers should be dining, kind of restaurants not to miss. And then it kind of evolved into this event that we now know as World's 50 Best Restaurants. So that started, and then regional lists were introduced in 2013.
How many regions do we have?
So we have Asia's 50 Best Restaurants and Latin America's 50 Best Restaurants. So MENA's 50 Best Restaurants is the first regional list to be introduced since then.
That's
and
awesome.
So that was introduced this year.
If I had made the list, now what do I have to do to stay on the list? I mean, what do you guys give any, do you think that, because now my traffic may explode, right? So some issues like service and others now might suffer if I'm not careful. So what do you think it takes for people to stay on the list or even advance on that list?
It's a really good question. And I think the environment will change every year. So the voters change every year. So I have to change my voters by 25% every year.
Aha, that's interesting. Okay.
Just because a restaurant made it on a list one year, there's no guarantee that they will make it again. Or just because they're number 2 one year doesn't mean they'll be number 1 the next year.
From other lists, Claudia, did you see so if I was number 2 on the list, do you see 2 disappearing or more like 2 moves to 20? I'm just talking about other global lists that you've seen.
It's rare to see such a massive move.
So 2 becomes a 4 potentially.
Yeah.
But,
Unless
there's some real big problem, right?
Or a number 1.
Or a number one.
Yeah,
Usually the trend is upwards.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but 3 fills can't win again. They go into the best.
To best of the best.
Yes,
That's what happens with the world.
The number 1, cannot win.
Oh, that's interesting.
Twice,
all the number ones go into the
best of the best category. Yeah, that was introduced a couple of years ago, I think just before
the best of the
COVID.
best. Wow,
yeah,
that sounds
well,
great.
because we had a few kind of repeat winners. Noma had won a couple of times. Osteria, Francescana, El Bulli. They get different colored scarves. They get
like
purple
a hall of
scarves.
fame.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it is about foulards and scarves. I knew it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Get
What
that,
color do
get
they
that
get?
scarf on.
Scarlet.
Scarlet for the restaurants that are on the list. Best of the best is purple.
Oh.
So you can
This is
see
so
the mingling in that
interesting.
room. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw the ones in purple.
You're like,
it's
I
all
want a
making
purple
sense
one.
now.
And I think that's a great decision. It gives people a chance to kind of move up and it makes the best of the best.
Do you facilitate interaction between members of that list? In other words, is there like a giant database and you're like, obviously there's the actual event where people mingle and socialize, but do you facilitate some of these interactions? In other words, say you're kind of a member of a special club now and, hear everybody's numbers and, feel free to talk to each other or anything like that? Or
No, it's not.
They're
a
all friends
chef,
on Instagram,
chef
I
dating
guess.
service.
Yeah. I guess Instagram does that in a way.
No,
best of the best.
they do. That's kind of what the events are for. They kind of in the lead up, we have a lot of kind of activations that happen and talks, which, you know, a lot of chefs are a part of. And so there are always like chances to meet each other and meet members of the public. Actually, what differentiated MENA this year was that a lot of those events were open to the public. So we're open to consumers, which I thought was really nice and inclusive, because usually it's all industry.
To make that list, in your view, what would you advise? If I am a budding restaurateur or chef or have my own restaurant, and I'm like, I really want to get on this list, what would you be advising me?
Okay, I think firstly you need to look at who's voting. As Claudia said, you have chefs and restaurateurs. Then you have the food writers, and then you have the well-traveled gourmands. Now, they're all very different.
Gourmands.
Sorry.
No, I just like the gourmands.
Yeah, you, basically, yeah.
I'm not quite, but maybe.
Well, you're both. You're both restaurateur and well-traveled gourmand.
Yeah. Sorry.
Well, they're all very different groups, demographics, different interests, actually. And I think the way they would judge is very different.
Very good point.
So you need to look at that. You need to target your audience. I mean, rule of thumb in any marketing is know your audience. And then look at practically, or technically rather, they're voting towards the end of the summer for next year's list. So
stay top of mind.
You need to be top of mind. You need to plan activations. And I think you look at who made the list this year, and it was the restaurants that are top of mind. Some new ones that have only recently opened, but because they've recently opened, they're top of mind, and because what they're doing is very different and very good and best. But then there's also a lot of long-timers there, and that speaks to the imported concepts we talked about as well, that consistently deliver good food. And you look at the winner, they've been around for 5 years, but they've been steadily increasing their following. So I think that would be, overall my advice to anyone looking at making that list for next year.
For those that are a bit more hole-in-the-wall-ish or informal, do you feel it's a hero dish that makes them stand out? Or because when we're looking about the bigger concepts, right? Going back to kind of the Zumas of the world, right? The points you made earlier, Samantha, about kind of the 5 different, I mean, obviously they have space to express a lot of these things. The atmosphere, the interior design, the menu, the service. If I'm, to your point earlier, 5 plastic chairs and a small kitchen, some of these things are just, frankly, I mean, I might have my own charm. So what would I then be focused on? Let me just do like the best, I don't know, fried chicken in the world?
I think that can definitely help because it's a dish that's top of mind.
Yeah.
So that definitely ticks one box. I don't think it's a prerequisite by any means, but you need to be doing something that's a little bit different, I think.
You have to stand out.
Yeah, or you're going to be consistently good, like the Zumas and the LPMs.
And that's what makes them stand out.
Yeah, because they are consistent, yeah.
Did you feel, because one of the things I did like about the list, this is my personal opinion, is...
Just one thing.
No, I mean, I like many things about the list, sorry. But one thing that stood out to me is I did not feel it was marketing driven, if you know what I mean. Right. In other words, I mean, having good marketing and having good PR, I think, is a prerequisite. I think it's important that restaurateurs, take this seriously. But, now in every market, sometimes you have a few that are shouting from the rooftops, and you kind of feel like, why are you shouting? I mean, it's just not that good.
Yeah.
I did not feel that about, and that I think was a very good thing. I have felt that, very frankly, about other lists on occasion where I'm like, yeah, they are bombarding you with marketing or doing really good marketing even, but frankly, when I go to the restaurant, I don't get that excellence.
And that speaks to the unlicensed restaurants on that list.
It does.
Because, they are pretty small. Small outfits in a lot of cases, just one little restaurant that opened recently. You look at Orfali, number 6 on that list.
Fantastic.
Not been open even a year. I mean, that's fantastic. No marketing, no PR team. Didn't invite anybody.
Yeah, I mean, Orfali is, I think, also one of the advantages, frankly, for them was you just had so little that is Middle Eastern food, right? So to have contemporary Middle East and do it well, as they very much do, is a rarity, right? I mean, when you look at the list, to your point, Samantha, earlier, many Japanese concepts. So, it's kind of a bit like, I don't know, getting into Harvard, right? Like you need to kind of stand out with something a bit different.
Yep.
Claudia, just one thing on a kind of more personal note. How has that experience changed you? Because I'm just curious, I could imagine just, I don't know, the few days before, the day of, and then after. I mean,
She's so busy, I can't see her
I cannot even
anymore.
imagine the number of calls or SMS, either people who are on and very excited, or people who are complaining, or people who want to know, how do I get it? I mean, that's like, again, I mean, so how's your mental health?
I'll be sending 50 best of Bill for my therapist.
Okay.
No, listen.
No, seriously. I mean, I'm just curious about how has that experience been for you?
Yeah.
And what do you feel? Maybe give us like one or two highlights of something very fundamentally that must have changed you in some ways.
Yeah. Listen, it has been a total dream to be involved with this organization. I have been following it for years and years and years, and excuse me, get emotional. Even before I started writing about food professionally. So when I was approached, dream come true, right? And then the work starts, and it is a lot of work. It is a lot of work, and it's work that you do voluntarily. No money is exchanged is exchanged. So
it's almost a full-time job.
Yeah, around the awards and when we're selecting our voters, and it's a very kind of intricate process because there are criteria that you need to stick to. So it's 50-50 male and female. It's, from those profiles, the restaurateurs, the media, and the well-traveled gourmands, it's 30% each. In that, we have quotas for each country that we're looking after. So
and
it's
your area, so up to your geographic area, is one of the most intense because again, the density we spoke about.
And so it is a lot of work, and it does take over your life. I will put away the violin now and say that it is such a privilege to be a part of someone's joy. And there was so much joy and excitement and anticipation in that room on the night. And even before, like the lead up to it, the events leading up to it, it was such a celebration of the industry. And having grown up here, and a lot of these people are my friends, and I've seen a lot of these people kind of come up, and so for me, it was such a wonderful thing to see them finally be recognized on a platform that, is global.
So that now inspired to be like, I want to start my own restaurants. Like, hell
no,
no, I'll never do this.
No. No. I'm anxious, not crazy. So no, I would never do that because I do feel that it's the hardest job in the world. And so I have so much respect for anyone who takes it upon themselves to do that. But yeah, the way it's changed me again, like always newfound respect for the people who do this and who have skin in the game and who work, who do these 20-hour days on their feet. And it was just wonderful to see them get a night that was for them purely on their achievements, not on, advertising or tables or, it was a real kind of moment to recognize these really hard-working people. It made me really, really proud to be involved.
Well, thank you. You approach this with a lot of humility, I have to say. So we appreciate that. And it's actually nice to see. Don't let it get to your head, please.
She's setting the example.
Yeah, it really is. No, it's heartwarming. You really are. It's great. When we come back, Samantha and Claudia share some predictions on what they expect from future editions of the list. That's right after the short break. Welcome back. You're listening to our special 50th episode featuring Claudia de Brito and Samantha Wood, aka Fodiva, on the inaugural MENA 50 Best list. One of our former guests, Reef Othman, was awarded the region's inaugural Chef's Choice Award, and his restaurant, Reef Koshayaki, made it to number 16 on the list this year. When we reached Reef, he was traveling between the US and the UK, so he left us a voice note with his thoughts.
MENA 50 Best has been great, has been awesome, has been epic for them to enter the GCC. Business-wise has been always been good back then. But I think with them, business has been increased from, I would say, 15 to 20% now. Back then as well, we were also busy, but now, it's increased about 15, 20% after our award. And mainly, we have a lot of new faces coming in. They're spending money on the food. Even a couple, they buy a lot of food just to taste, because they're there for holiday. They have a few days to travel around and try out some other food. And yeah, I think that's great. That's what we need in Dubai. As you know, Dubai has so many offerings and so many good places to go, without a doubt. And we, as a small restaurant, we need to make sure that we retain our regulars. Making new dishes, keep it consistent is very important. And that's my motto. In any restaurant that I've been working on. Nevertheless, keeping the place fresh and clean always, just keep the standard high, because we're already in the map, we're in the 50 best, so there's no more, take it easy. Now it's like everybody have to focus on, blinkers on, boom, be sharp.
Samantha, predictions for next year? You don't have to predict a certain name, but just maybe on trend based. What would you predict? You've already predicted that you'd see hopefully more homegrown.
I think just to precede that as well, I do think what's really important, because there's been so much discussion about the ranking and why certain restaurants didn't make the list and why certain ones did make the list. That at the end of the day, let's remember that it was the first list, but MENA has its own list. The
100%.
fact that they have this list should be the number one.
Yes, absolutely.
Talking
Great
point,
vote of
really.
confidence for the region.
100%. Now, in terms of prediction, it's impossible to
but
predict
that's why
that.
it's fun.
I'm not one for, I don't even do annual trends posts, because I'm thinking, who am I to say that this is going to be a trend? I'm not like a fortune
You're a food
reader.
diva. What do you mean?
Absolutely. Don't,
Oh
please.
my God.
Humility, it's just more, fine, but yeah.
But I do think we're going to see more unlicensed and more homegrown make that cut. And again, speaking more towards the UAE, because this unlicensed versus licensed is more prevalent here than it is anywhere else.
And in terms of your own list, which is very closely watched as well, would you rank it at some point? Because it's interesting. I mean, you don't do it by ranking. So
no, I won't do it by ranking. My list is Dubai list as well. So
Yes.
that
But
that
why
is
wouldn't you,
the
just out of
market.
curiosity?
I don't think, who am I? This is my list. I also don't say it's the best restaurants.
No,
I
that's
say
true.
it's the top restaurants, and I clarify it by saying these are my go-to restaurants. It's a very personal list. It's the
great.
list that I go back and refer to when I want to go somewhere else when I'm not reviewing. Because a huge chunk of my time is taken up with new restaurants opening, because those are the ones that get reviewed on the site. But, I want to go out with friends. I want to go out with my husband. I want to take visitors to restaurants. And I want people to use my list as a bucket list for when they're deciding
do you
where
think
to
you're
go
the
out.
secret feeder for the MENA 50 best?
Of course, yeah.
Humility
No,
out the
no
window.
no
It
ego
just took a
here,
little
yeah.
needling, that's all. Yeah. No,
No, not at all. I don't.
course
I mean,
not, I'm
like
joking.
I said, when I put the list, to be honest, my list comes out in January.
That's
I
correct.
purposely held off on it because I knew 50 Best was coming up and it would
It
just
says a lot
get
about you.
drowned.
Yeah.
And I waited a little bit. I'm also conscious that you have other media titles that are launching their awards over the next month or so.
Correct.
So I needed to get in between. I'm a small player.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate that I have a strong following for this
You have a
this
very strong
particular
following,
area.
and I'm not just saying that. I mean, for a lot of
yeah.
reasons, my own son refers to you and your list, and what's on the list. I mean,
Yeah.
for the homegrown kind of guys like him, he's 11. They actually look as though your following extends from a very young age. I think what it really says about, as you said, both of you, about this part of the world is the fact that you now have multiple lists doing different things, and they actually don't fully overlap. In some cases, don't overlap at all. Really speaks for how far we've gone. I mean, we opened the Lighthouse 5 years ago, and at that point, we were one of the early homegrown brands. So just look at how far we've come in 5 years. 10 years, obviously, but especially in the last 5. And this is just the beginning. I mean, being Egyptian, I can tell you that in Egypt, it's just starting. Post-revolution, we had a number of years where absolutely nothing was happening. And just in the last 2-3 years, you've started seeing an upbeat. Saudi, obviously, is only just starting as well. I would love to start seeing not just Riyadh names, but Jeddah names and even Farah's hometown names from the Eastern Province and others. So I think this is a very, very... And then, more Kuwait and more Doha and more Oman and more Morocco.
I think you'll definitely see more Saudi, because Saudi is just blossoming now. So I do think you will.
Blossoming, and it's an interesting market because if you know Saudi a little bit, Riyadh is very different than Jeddah and very different than Khobar. So I can start seeing over time trends that are market-based, a bit like Dubai, Abu Dhabi. Right now, it's sort of people are still kind of talking at surface level Saudi, right? Which I think is very exciting.
So, I mean, something we didn't really talk about was the fact that this list came out, or, voting happened last year where travel was, still tough. So I think in subsequent years, we will hopefully see more representation from around the region. I think a lot of voters even are well-traveled.
I say well-traveled, Ramon. I mean, couldn't travel.
Couldn't. A lot of people didn't have the opportunity to travel. They couldn't. There were restrictions, and so I think we'll also see an evolution of more representation from a lot of different countries in the list. I would love to see a Palestinian restaurant on the list. Obviously things are still tough in that region, but hopefully, again, as travel eases up, as hopefully tensions ease and things get better, as more countries normalize relations and people can actually get there, because that's been a challenge too. Hopefully, that'll make it easier for restaurants from more diverse parts of our region to be represented on the list.
I think it's MENA's 19 countries, but was it 10 or 11 countries that made the list?
Yeah.
So there's still huge scope.
As we see more relaxation of rules across the GCC especially, would you envisage at some point MENA 50 bars as well?
I mean, I think that would be great. Why not? I think we have some great bars in this. We have great bars that are on the 50 best bars
100%.
List, and yeah, why not?
Just would be nice to see identity, and this maybe even in the future don't have to be like licensed bars. That could be like it'd just be interesting that to see the beverage side, which is often
that's a massive trend. Sorry,
Exactly.
Low ABV and low alcohol, no alcohol.
That's exactly right. Doesn't need to be alcoholic.
Absolutely. And there's a lot that's I hate this word, but a lot that's going on in the realm of mixology when it comes to alcohol-free beverages.
Yes.
I hope we see a bit more plant-based. I mean, that's the way that the world's list is going. We're starting to see a lot more plant-based.
Well, with 11 Madison making the statement that they made,
Yeah.
I think that may be one of the predictions over the next year or two that you could potentially have a vegan or a plant-based restaurant make the list.
I mean, we're saying Geranium, that was number 2. They've gone meat-free. So they're concentrating. They're not plant-based, but they still have seafood. But yeah, I think that's the way that things are going. I think it's great that we're recognizing sustainability. I think that will also kind of play on people's minds when they're making their decisions.
Because you've also got the special awards, actually, the People Awards almost, as well, in addition to the top 50.
And those People's Awards, how are the same voters?
It's the same voters,
it's the same voters.
Actually, one thing that I'd like, and it's maybe even something for discussion, is that the global list, they're all 100.
Yeah.
It's the top 50 that get announced on the night, and a week prior, the 51 to 100. We didn't have that here. So is that something for next year?
Point.
Is it because we don't have a big enough pool?
I mean, my personal opinion, it would be
Yeah.
the latter, to be honest, at this
Yeah.
stage. And I'm actually kind of glad, because then you may be tempted to do almost do fillers. I'm just thinking, if I was one of the jury members and having to put 100, honestly, you start kind of going bit. So maybe it starts with 50 and eventually gets to 100. I mean, there's only growth ahead. All right. Well, thank you very much. That was very, very interesting, very fulfilling. And hopefully next year we'll bring you back after next year's award and we'll have another discussion.
And then we'll play it back and think,
I know.
Well, exactly. That's why I did the predictions part.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much for having us.
thank
Thank you,
Thank
Hashem. You're a
you.
good interviewer.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for joining us on this special episode by the Lighthouse Conversations with me, Hashem Montasser. If you haven't heard it already, we also have a first part of the MENA 50 Best List where we talk about how the list came together and some reactions from the industry. You'll find that in your podcast players along with this episode, so please do check it out. This episode was produced by Chirag Desai and our content director is Farah Sharif. Make sure to follow us on your favorite podcast player if you aren't already, so you don't miss any upcoming episodes. You can also find all our previous episodes at thelighthouse.ae/podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do share it with a friend and leave us a review. We'll see you in 2 weeks.